You're all muted because we will be recording this webinar, so please don't worry too much about that. We're going to get started shortly. Give people just a little bit more time to get logged in, so give another minute. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Please make sure that you have called everyone who's on. I take that back. Let me just type in a message to everyone to make sure that they have called in. So, today's presentation is on using NYSAN's Quality Self-Assessment tool to improve program quality. We did today by Ali Laidi, who is NYSAN's Policy and Communications Coordinator. Briefly overview NYSAN, for those of you who are not familiar with the New York State After School Network. I'm going to give a brief overview of the self-assessment tool and talk a little bit about how it was structured and the intended outcomes of using the tool. Ali will give you a brief overview of how to conduct an effective self-assessment, including how to facilitate and some of the logistical issues that you'll want to think through planning how you want to do your quality self-assessment. And then we will talk about the ways in which the QSA is intended to really be a tool for continuous program improvement. And finally, we will take questions. Please do save them for the end, although feel free to keep adding them into the chat bar as we go along so that we have some ideas and can start prepping answers to questions that people have. After School Network, for those of you who are not yet familiar with us, is a statewide public-private partnership. We bring together providers as well as state agencies, technical assistance folks, and a number of other contributors, including funders, to the after-school field here in New York. And the goal really is to think broadly about after-school, summer, and out-of-school time programs and how we can best use those programs to support the needs of our students, both academic achievement, but also for development of their social skills, their relation skills, the ways in which we help youth really develop into being well citizens and adults. For those who are not familiar with NYSAN, just a brief overview of some of our public and private partners. We're very lucky that the Education Department and the Office of Children and Family Services, as well as statewide not-for-profits like After School Works New York and the Alliance of the Statewide YMCAs, as well as a number of New York City partners, including the After School Corporation and New York City's Department of Community and Youth Development, really support the work of NYSAN in bringing the field together. We also have 8 regional networks across the state. For those of you who are not currently involved in the regional network in your area, we do highly recommend recommend that you get connected. It's a great way to find out about opportunities and meet peers in the neighborhood who might be willing to share some of their own quality improvement strategies. I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Allie, who will kick us off and give you some really helpful insights into how to use the QSA tool effectively.
Thank you, Nora. Again, my name is Allie, and I'm going to go over the Quality Self-Assessment, or QSA tool, with you all today. QSA is a self-assessment tool which has a lot of inherent benefits to your program. Self-assessments help program providers and stakeholders to understand overall program quality and to identify strengths, areas for improvement, and steps needed to create improvement. It's a stakes process because it takes place internally within your organization. It can focus on program needs and priorities while keeping areas outside the focus from slipping. The QSA tool is organized around 10 elements of quality. It breaks each element down into specific indicators that can help program providers determine their strengths and areas in need of improvement. It's structured to result in an action plan for increasing program quality. As a background, the tool was developed by NYSAN and its partners. Those developed were experienced program and TA providers, and it was developed to be relevant and reasonable. The tool defines program quality as the 10 essential elements of a quality after-school program. These elements include observable features of an after-school program, such as the environment and climate, or programming and activities. It also includes non-observable features like administration and organization, and program sustainability and growth. The 10 elements listed here cover essential aspects of a quality program. The difference between using the QSA tool and formal evaluation. There are several distinctions outlined in this chart. The QSA tool provides structure for dialogues around outcomes and quality. Through facilitated discussion and self-assessment, the tool strengthens communication between program stakeholders. Doing helps to build a collective vision for the program. Quality improvement cycle uses data gathered to inform practice and build capacity. The self-assessment is often facilitated by program staff or other stakeholders. Formal evaluation takes a more formal approach to assessing programs to determine what their outcomes are. Data for evaluation is often used for accountability and compliance, and it has higher stakes and less gray areas. It's also often facilitated by an external observer instead of the people within the program. You may have other quality frameworks as well, and you may wonder how the QSA tool compares. The QSA tool is aligned with SACR, YPUA, and NAA standards. It's also aligned with the New York State Program Accreditation Framework and can be used as the first step towards achieving accreditation from After School Works New York. If you want more about accreditation, you can visit the After School Works website. There are benefits of using the QSA tool. As we touched on earlier, self-assessment helps develop consensus and strengthens buy-in from stakeholders. Self-assessment directly connects to quality improvement through creating an action plan and a professional development plan. This makes the program more likely to see improvement through the use of the cycle of improvement. Advocates also recognize or require the use of self-assessment tools and will prepare programs to meet increasing expectations of funders. In 2009, NYSAN put out a survey to QSA users and found that 83% of users reported positive benefits from using the tool, including increased participant engagement and strengthened community partnerships. The full report of this survey on the NYSAN website. Of using the self-assessment tool is that you are positioned to recognize staff and stakeholder value. Even by simply participating in the self-assessment process, stakeholders provide a tremendous value to the program through giving their feedback and aiming to work towards quality improvement. Self-assessment is meant to be a positive experience for the program in this way. A little bit about the cycle of improvement previously. And this is a visual representation of that concept. Once you made the decision to use the QSA tool and have committed to quality improvement, you begin by conducting a self-assessment at the top of this cycle. This will gather needed data about the program. With that data, you will create an improvement plan based on those areas in need of improvement. This may include offering additional professional development opportunities, coaching or modeling for staff, bringing in additional partners, structuring portions of the program or administrative processes, and more. When your stakeholders have decided on a plan for improvement, you will implement this plan in the program and then reassess the program afterwards to see the progress that you've made. At this point, you may find that you have made the necessary improvements and just want to maintain quality in those areas and move on to something else. Or you may find that there have been unforeseen roadblocks to success and the improvement plan needs to be adjusted accordingly. Then implement the plan that you made again, do assessment, and continue the cycle of improvement forward following that same cycle. Deeper into the QSA tool. The tool is available online, and we will take a look at the website together at the end of this webinar. It all comes with a user guide for your reference for those items that we're going to go over next. Okay. We learned the QSA tool is structured into 10 elements. Each element has a page such as the one shown here. It includes the overall definition of the element in a quality program. This one says, for environment and climate, a quality program provides a safe, healthy, and nurturing environment for all participants. That definition that's broken down further into indicators. For example, the first one says, provides a stimulating, welcoming, and supportive environment for young people. All of those indicators build together to make that overall definition of quality for environment and climate. On the survey page, you'll see that you have the opportunity to rate each indicator at a performance level from 1 to 4, and also rate the priority of working on that indicator by marking when you plan to make improvements to that indicator, be it right now, this year, or next year. You may have an asterisk also next to some of the indicators. Those are indicators that should be in place before a program begins operation. A performance level, it's important to understand what each of the levels means. Level 4 is excellent and exceeding standards. Level 3 is satisfactory or meeting standards. Level 2 means that some progress has been made and you are approaching the standard, but there's still some work to do. And level 1 means that the standard is not met right now, and it may mean that the program hasn't started working on this indicator yet, so that might be something where you want to start doing that. The expectation is to strive for a level 3 at the meeting standards level, and over time to continue to strive for a level 4 for that excellent and exceeding standards. Supports that go along with the QSA tool. Zoom in provides further meat to the tool. Instead of leaving the person filling out the survey to guess at the indicator level the program is operating at, zooming in gives clear examples of what the program may look like at each of the levels of quality for every indicator in the tool. These are examples, and it's more important to look at the intent of the indicator than to use this as a checklist for what the program must do. There are other ways to meet the intent than those specifically outlined in the zooming in section. The next part on here is try this, and it includes additional ideas and activities to help you enhance and strengthen program quality. Taking action provides practical examples from improving, and tips for success will help you engage in reflective dialogue or meet indicators and identify improvement strategies that lead to exceeding standards. And these are all the sections that are available in the tool online on our website that we're going to take a look at the end. So we have an idea of kind of what the tool is structured like, we need to talk about facilitating the self-assessment process. The self-assessment process is made up of focus group discussions. It's important to determine who's going to lead this process. When who that person will be, keep in mind the following traits of a good facilitator. A good facilitator provides opportunities for everyone to contribute. Actively listen and connect ideas and themes as they emerge. A facilitator needs to be prepared to answer questions about policies and procedures, and this is something that they learn once they've been chosen as a facilitator. They need to also avoid personalizing what's shared in the process and remain non-judgmental. The important part is to help bring consensus and closure to discussions. So it's important to remember that the goal of these focus group discussions is to come to a consensus on what the currently is, such as which level for every indicator the program is at, and then develop an action plan for improvement to get to that level 3 or level 4. Now, it would be possible to have everyone to agree on an exact level for every indicator, but everyone does need to agree or at least be willing to live with the action plan that's created through that focus group discussion. And it's the facilitator's job to make this happen. So that's something important to keep in mind when you're selecting a person to facilitate this process. One facilitator, we also need participants for our focus group. And it's important to invite all relevant stakeholders to participate. These include youth participants, program staff, parents, guardians, and family members, school administrators, and any others involved in your program. You about custodial staff in the building, community members, and you may even include board members or funders. Though that this is meant to be a low-stakes process, so it's important to determine if your board members or funders will be able to participate in a non-judgmental way and maintain that low-stakes feeling. When together a group, it's also important to think about who is really appropriate for the conversation. While you should certainly include participants and parents when you're talking about something like relationships or programming and activities, they might have the background knowledge required or appropriate or input when it comes to things like administration and organization or program sustainability. So that might be an area to look more towards your staff members to be involved in the discussion. So when you're putting together this group, be inclusive of everyone that you can, but be to get the right people in the room. Okay. You need to determine when would be a good time to facilitate the process. The timing of self-assessment may be in the beginning of the year if you would like to strengthen relationships and begin building consensus around program goals and vision. And that's a good way to kind of start out the year so that you know where to go moving forward. But you also might wish to assess in the middle of the year, which is currently where we are, if you could take a step back and see now the program's already in operation, what is and what's not working in the practice, and that gives a lot of meat to that focus group discussion. Here is also another option for facilitating the self-assessment, and that's a good time to identify areas of expansion or improvement to implement in the following year. That might be a good review of what you've already done for the year to make a difference for next year moving forward. So Nora is going to share with you all some other ideas on how some organizations have chosen to facilitate the self-assessment process in actual practice.
So one of the interesting things that I have encountered as I have spoken to programs across the state and gone and done site visits is to discover that a lot of programs have really incorporated the QSA deeply into their practice and have done so in ways that are structured around what they most need out of this process and how it best creates the kind of buy-in and continuous improvement practice that they see as necessary for their programs. So I'm going to share two brief examples with you, both actually coming from the western half of the state. So one example out of Buffalo is a program that has decided that the best way for them to work through the QSA is to have each staff member take the lead on one indicator. So at their monthly staff meetings, a staff member will come forward with their indicator for the month and will actually guide the group's discussion through that indicator. And they found that doing so helps improve staff members' ability to lead groups, so it's a professional development opportunity for their staff, but it's also a way of really ensuring that there is buy-in and ownership over that work, so that the staff members who have really thought through that area and have led that discussion are very invested in working on the continuous improvement process. There's the follow-up to whatever the consensus the group reached about where they were on each of the indicators. Another example, which is a slightly different use of the QSA, comes out of Jamestown, New York. They have found that using the QSA in meetings with their principals has been a truly phenomenal way to increase principal and school administrator buy-in to the quality of the programs that they run. So they have monthly meetings for each of the sites where the principal is invited, as well as other school administrators, the site director, the program director. They take two areas of the QSA for each meeting and work through, and as a group, to achieve consensus on where they think their programs are on each indicator. And the program director who was telling me about this practice highlighting the ways in which working through the QSA made the principal aware not only of how much quality thinking went on in the after-school world, so really, quite frankly, radically shifted her understanding of what after-school program is, how much curriculum preparation you all do, how much thought you have about school alignment, but also has convinced the principals and other administrators to really treat the after-school program as a core opportunity to reach students. So the meetings have become a way of sharing where they would like to see new work on alignment, and of giving them a vocabulary to talk about areas where they see quality and areas where they might want to see improvement, because they can refer back to the QSA and to the indicators that they've all discussed together. So those are two small examples of some of the unique ways that folks in New York are currently using the QSA to really, again, not just improve the quality of their program, although that's the core goal here, but to also develop the kind of buy-in from stakeholders and staff that's necessary to really make quality improvement actuality, as opposed to a checklist that you go through once in a while.
Okay. Thank you, Nora. I'm getting a couple of questions about for who should be involved in the focus group discussion and the structure. So I want to talk a little bit further about that. A lot of participants clearly in your program, and a lot more than staff members, and you might wonder about the ratio of who should be involved. And the same is true of parents or any other participants. There are several different ways of involving people in the self-assessment process, and it's not just coming to that focus group meeting. Something you may wish to do is get feedback from all of your participants, or the majority of them, through a survey before you have your focus group discussion. You can do that with parents as well, and also with staff members. Anyone that you're bringing to, you could survey first. Actually a great way to do it, because once you have that paper survey before a focus group meeting, you have some results for feedback to discuss with the facilitator in that focus group process. And then you can kind of select people from the initial group of surveys to come and participate. So you might survey all of your participants, survey 100 participants and get feedback to discuss in the focus group. You only have 5 that are invited to participate in the actual focus group discussion, and that number is up to you and can vary. That way you get a voice from the group to talk about kind of why they think the survey results look the way that they do during that focus group session, without having 100 kids to try to facilitate at one time. You can also break up your focus group meetings and have structured in several ways, as Nora was talking about. You can have a meeting to do this and have it separate. So you have one meeting with participants, and then you have one meeting with staff members, and you have one meeting with parents. And kind of the facilitator would then be in charge of combining all of that information and bringing it back to the main group or the table to determine where the program currently is. Or you could just have a smaller group to have that focus group session. But it's a way to include more voices in the process, or as many as possible, without having to have everyone available to come on the same day and sit in the same room together. And sometimes you can do that as well in a strategic way. If you think that there's going to be some disagreement in some areas, you may choose to break up the session. Or you also may say that perhaps you don't think a specific group of people will be as comfortable being open with where they think the program is, depending on who is in the room. So it might be a time to separate out. Say you don't think the staff members will be as open and honest if the site coordinator is in there, then you can have a separate meeting with just the facilitator and the staff members, and that facilitator would bring the information back to the group. That helps a little bit. But there's huge benefit to including youth in this process, and parents as well, families. Anyone involved is going to have more buy-in. They'll certainly learn more about the program and buy in further to making those program improvements. So let's talk a little bit more about what we do in this meeting. I have some information on structuring the self-assessment. We're going to move on to getting results. Once you decide on where the program currently is, the focus group will create an action plan for improvement. The template shown here is available as an Excel file on the NYSAN website. What you'll notice here is that for each indicator in need of improvement, there is an area to create strategies, assign those strategies to who is responsible for implementing them, determine time frame for completion, and list out any resources that will be needed for completion. And it's important to use an action plan template similar to this, or something that says not just what we're going to do, but who's going to do it and when they're going to do it by, because that way we're creating the accountability to make sure that those improvements actually happen. In order to create continuous improvement, programs must know staff skill sets and what other skills staff members might need. Professional development is a large part of continuous program improvement and can be offered through a variety of venues, including program observations, peer mentoring and coaching, supervision, staff meetings, conferences, networking events, and higher education courses. So those are all great ways to offer professional development if there are things that you see are needed in your action plan and different areas that you can put as plans for improvement. So take a look at this resource on the Professional Development Planning Tool. So this is the PACE, or Partnership for After-School Education Professional Development Planning Tool, and it's also available online. It's a great resource for creating an ongoing plan that works in conjunction with continuous improvement. It's a step towards identifying skills and needs for each individual staff person. Once you've done this for every staff member, and it might be through observation and through having an individual meeting with that staff member, take a look at this list as a summary of your whole team, and you can look for commonalities to determine some group training options. And you have other staff members who are in need of specific things. You can work with each staff person to identify professional development opportunities that are appropriate specifically to that person. Okay. Before we look at the website, I also wanted to mention that there are now some extension elements that you can use in conjunction with the QSA tool. partnership with NYSAN, Asia Society's Partnership for Global Learning has created an element on global learning. So that whole element, such similar to how environment and climate is, that focuses specifically on integrating global learning into your program. Additionally, Indiana After School Network has elements on STEM, college and career readiness, and on summer learning. They're structured in a similar way to the QSA and are a great way to assess your program in those areas, especially if you're a veteran user and are looking to expand your self-assessment into more areas of the program. Also, if you are looking to add any of those elements to your program for the first time, it's a great thing to take a look at in advance to see what it is you need to do to have a high-quality program in those areas. In this view, where the global learning piece is linked on the NYSAN website, and I'll also show you how to access the tools on the Indiana After School website, which is at www.indianaafterschool.org. Okay. I'm going to open up the website quickly. So this is the NYSAN website. We've clicked on Quality Assurance on the right-hand side, and then we have clicked on NYSAN Program Quality Self-Assessment Tool. And it's all on the website, again, at www.nysan.org. This portion has a link to program quality resources, as well as a place to download the user's guide and tools as PDF. So you see here in the middle, the QSA, that's the wrong one. On the top one, under Quality Assurance, the NYSAN Quality Self-Assessment Tool. This one's in English, and it's the second edition. If any of you have used the first edition already, you can also download just a sample of what's updated for the second edition, but you can use this link to download the whole tool as a PDF. You can download the user's guide in a PDF or web-based format. Here, let's go to the PDF format. Actually, I don't think that'll show. So this is the PDF of the user's guide, and it has pages in it just like the ones we were looking at in the slideshow on what the self-assessment is, as well as those tools that do, let's see, further down. So I'm zooming in, taking action, and tips for success. Okay. At the bottom of this page, which is the NYSAN Program Quality Self-Assessment Tool page, you can find that Global Learning Self-Assessment Tool that Asia Society put together as well. The right-hand side of the page, you can see that there's a link for facilitating the process, which talks about further information for how to involve and why you should involve stakeholders in the process. It also includes steps for facilitating the process. Then, for the right side, you see links for each of the individual elements. That's going to show you how to use the tool. It's also going to show you each of the individual indicators here. It says a quality program, and then recognize that first one from what we looked at earlier, provides a stimulating, welcoming, and supportive environment for young people. Then also shows the taking action and try this for each of the elements, as well as the tips for success. And at the bottom, you'll see an extra section on research, tools, templates, and resources with links that you all can use to help in facilitating this process and creating the action plan for improvement. I want to point out where to find the zooming in on this page. Under the section that says how to use this tool, it defines those levels 1 through 4. Has a link that says click here for PDF, and I'm going to open that up to show you. This is what it looks like for the more in-depth definitions for the performance level for each indicator. You can see on indicator 1, there's a paragraph on each of the performance levels, and it sets up from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. If you read through in the definitions, what the program does. And you can actually use these steps if you can look and say, right now our program is level 2 in this, the difference between a level 2 and a level 3. And that helps you define how to get to that level 3 as you're creating your action plan. For example, on the first one, you'll see on a level 2, the first sentence it says, staff members try to greet youth as they arrive if they are able to do so. While you're doing as well in that area, we'll take a look at 3, and it says a staff member is designated as a greeter. And it tells us that maybe a way to improve in that area is to designate a specific staff member as a greeter to make sure that everyone's greeted. We can take that further looking at level 4. It says a staff member is designated as a greeter, and the greeter checks each participant in and ensures that they find the activity they would like to join. So that is even further what that greeter can do to create a higher level of quality in this area of providing a stimulating, welcoming, and supportive environment for all young people. And that makes it easier for you all as you're developing your action plan with your focus group to determine how to move from one level to the other. So it's a great resource that I highly recommend downloading for any element that you're looking at. It also helps you clearly define which performance level your program is currently operating at. Go back to the website. You can also find this tool in other languages on the right-hand side. If you click Document Library, you can see here the Quality Self-Assessment tool is available to be downloaded in English, Chinese, Haitian Creole, Korean, Russian, and Spanish. And that's going to be helpful as you're working with stakeholders who speak other languages. And they're the same indicators, just put into those languages so that they can participate more fully and completely in the process with you as well. I'll take you over to the ANA website so that you can see that tool as well. That'll load for me here. That'll pop up in just a second so I can show you guys those other tools for the elements on STEM college career readiness. Let's see here. Here it comes. Again, it was STEM, college, career readiness, and summer learning that they've put together in a similar format to the QSA tool, and they're great extensions.
Looks excited.
Okay.
We will circulate the link in the follow-up to this webinar with that information, since it appears that their website is down.
Yes. If you go on it yourself, you'll see that there's a bar on the top, and I believe it says self-assessment or quality tool on that top bar, and if you click on it, that page has a link to each of those areas. Okay, so let's go back to the slides here, and we will see if anyone has some questions that you would like us to answer. A great question that says, how could you present your results to stakeholders? I think means once we've done the self-assessment process, and it can also talk about once we have made the plan for improvement. That's a great question and something that is certainly important to do, not only to let your stakeholders know that you are going to participate in this self-assessment process and invite them to be active participants as you're doing it, but also to let them know what the results are once we've done it and once we've made the improvements. And you might do that in several different ways, especially depending on who the stakeholders are. For instance, their parents versus participants versus funders, board members. One way to do this is through your program's communication policy already. If you have newsletters that go out, either monthly or quarterly newsletters, that's a great place to showcase some improvements that you've made in your program during that time through the use of the QSA tool. You might want to include this in any type of annual report that you put out on the results that you have in your program. Another way to do this is to have a meeting to talk about it, and it might be similar format to the focus group, but more of a presentation where you would invite, say, parents to have parent night, talk about where the program currently is and what your plan to improve is, as well as how they can help in that process. So there's a lot of great ways to present results to stakeholders at varying portions or time frame within the self-assessment process. If anyone has other questions, please type them into the chat bar on the side of your screen so that we can see that and answer those for the group. A great question that says that many of the programs have large turnover of staff, and how can we deal with that within this process? That's a great question, and it's something that happens certainly in this field a lot, especially when we're working with part-time staff members. There's certainly a lot of staff turnover. Something that I think is helpful and important to keep in mind is that quality improvement takes time, and it's a continuous process. If you remember back to that picture of the improvement cycle, it never stops. It's a circle. So we're continuously assessing the program, reassessing our program, creating plans, and making improvements. And that can affect in a couple of different ways. When you have staff turnover, it certainly can take a toll. You have specific people who are involved in the focus group that then leave the program, or new people who come in who might not have been involved in the beginning of the program. To that, the most important thing is for the group to reassign any roles that were given in the action plan to staff members who are leaving the program, and make sure that that happens on a timely basis, and so that when you reconvene, someone else has taken care of those responsibilities. It's important when you're hiring new staff to let them know that you all are using this self-assessment and give them the background information that they need in order to actively participate. The other side of things is the way that quality in a program can fluctuate when we have staff turnover, especially if it's large staff turnover. For instance, if we have a lot of staff members, we do the self-assessment towards the end of the program during the school year, and the next school year we have a significant number of new staff members, and we've lost some of those that created that plan for improvement. And at that point we need to think about getting those staff members buy-in, but we also need to think about the way quality can change when we have a new set of staff members. And the important thing there is to reassess the program at the point where it is now. We want our work to be as efficient as possible, so we are working on a quality action plan that we've developed, say, a year ago, and the steps are to create improvements in specific areas that are no longer the things that are our priorities, that's a waste of our time. So we need to be good of that, especially thinking specifically of which element it is that you're focusing on. For instance, if it's something, to say some of the more observable things like environment and climate or relationships or programming, those are really dependent on the staff members that are on the ground in the program every day. So we have significant turnover. That might be a good time to do a reassessment as we bring those new staff members in to get them involved in the process and really refocus on the areas that we need focus. Okay, we have another question. For a facilitator to ensure that things go well and run smoothly? That's a great question as well. Let's see. There is some great information on facilitating the process involved in the visitor's guide that's available online, so I definitely recommend downloading that and taking a look. It's on page 8. It talks about facilitating the process, and it talks about how to prepare. The first thing is to create a message. You need to understand why program self-assessment is important and how it can lead to quality improvement, and help craft the message. And just being on this and getting a better idea of the tool is a great first step in that process. Success means working with program leaders and organizational supervisors prior to starting to determine how outcomes and self-assessment process will be turned into action. So having a good idea of what the program's expectations are before you walk in. Another great thing to do before you go is to know the big picture and actually complete the quality self-assessment tool yourself, at least reading through it. Depending on your role in the organization, you might not know all the answers as you're taking it, but at least you'll be more familiar with the nuances of each of the performance level definitions so that you can more accurately facilitate that conversation as we're trying to come to a consensus. The next thing for preparing is just getting everyone in the room and allowing time for the discussion to happen. I think I'll continue forward onto the next section, which is facilitating. And an important thing to consider when you're facilitating these discussions is to know who's in the room. So you need to know whether you're meeting just with staff members or just with parents, or if you're meeting with some parents, participants, staff members, board members, the principal of the school, the counselor. You need to know those positions and who's going to be in the room, and deeply they know the organization and kind of what their input to this process is going to be, and that way you're prepared mentally for what you're getting when you walk into the room. And that if you're meeting with staff members only, they probably all know each other already. But if you're meeting a wide variety of stakeholders, we need to make sure that we're doing introductions so that everyone feels comfortable and safe in the room. You can do that by having a community building activity or an icebreaker right at the beginning. And begin the process by kind of going over the QSA tool a little bit with them so that it refreshes everyone's understanding of that tool and their role in the process. And it helps participants to kind of focus in on what they're working on. And also you can ask participants to brainstorm some ground rules for working successfully as a group so that we're setting the group up for success from the beginning. They know that where they are is hopefully a safe environment to share their opinions as accurately as possible. And we'll make sure that either you or someone else is taking notes on feedback and suggestions. A great way to do that is on chart paper so that everyone can see it as we're going along. So really emphasize the positive things. This is, again, really meant to be a positive process for the program. And even though we're talking about creating an action plan for improvement at the end, it's just as important to recognize those areas where your program is already excelling and doing really well. And that's a great thing that comes out of these discussions as well. So really emphasize those things and acknowledge the strengths of everyone involved in their investment in the program's process. And that's a great way to get everyone involved on the same page and start the meeting off right. Okay. All right, I have another great question on how to use the tool in staff development training. That can depend on what type of staff development it is that you're interested in doing. And you can use it in several ways. One of the ways is kind of how Nora talked about having the staff members involved in actually running or facilitating these conversations to become in more of a leadership role. And that's a great way to, again, develop that leadership for each staff member and kind of groom people to understand this better. Another thing to do, a benefit of using the QSA tool, that staff development in and of itself, is when we do program self-assessment on something such as programming and activities, staff members have to read through the best practices that are part of the quality self-assessment tool and learn what a quality program actually looks like in the area of programming and activities, or whatever element it is that they're working on. So learning those best practices and standards, by doing that and by giving their input, are more likely to operate in that way themselves. You can also use this tool to pick out areas that you would like to put their staff development on through using that professional development planning tool, or just in the action plan that you create where you see areas that staff members need training or professional development, and other areas if you want to do coaching or modeling, any of those other ways of professional development that we talked about. You can find specific topics to do that on through the use of this tool as you're creating those plans. All right.
All right, any other questions? People who have questions, please get them into the chat bar now so that we can make use of Allie's expertise.
There are questions that you already asked that you still have further questions on, or maybe you meant something different, please feel free to clarify.
Folks are thinking about if they have any additional questions. One thing I did want to comment on from the sort of larger statewide field perspective is just how incredibly important this assessment process is to the growth of the field. The fact that the funding streams in New York, Advantage After School, the New York City's OST, School Time Program, and obviously for many of you as well, the 21st Century Program, requires the use of the QSA tool among all of their grantees, has really been invaluable for those of us in New York who work on trying to speak to stakeholders in the legislature, in the governor's office, in other agencies, about the ways that New York runs quality after-school programs. So I also think it's valuable to stress to all of you that when you are working on building your own programs through this QSA tool, you're also really contributing to building the field here in the state of New York. It gives us a lot of conviction that we can speak to the quality of what's being done, and also, quite frankly, the folks who fund a lot of you, a great deal of conviction themselves that their money is being well invested. So it is a process that we're really grateful that you will undertake and that you really invest time and energy in, because it does not just help your students, it also helps us overall talk about why we need more after school and why in particular we need more high quality after school here in New York. I have a few more questions.
Yeah, I did get a question on inputting answers into graph format, and I think that means when we're looking at that self-assessment survey. And while that's not something that's done online, you have to print it out and do it on paper. That's a graph format is a great way for a facilitator to show results if there's a survey that's done in advance of the focus group meeting. For instance, again, as we had talked about, maybe saying all of the participants first or all of the parents first, you can put those answers into a graph if they do that maybe on Excel on their own. Something important to think about when we put data in that way is that when we're looking at talking about where the program is, and we say that on element 1, indicator 1, we see that maybe 20 people put us at a level 2 and 30 at a level 3 and 5 at a level 4. And we're looking at what the program is actually operating at. Not just averaging out those answers. We're doing that discussion in the focus group to decide where the program actually is. And it may be that you find if you're using surveys from different demographics of your stakeholders, it may say that on that specific question, participants thought we were doing really well and thought we were doing pretty well, and staff members rated us a little bit lower. And that's a point to think about what that we know as staff members that participants don't know, or what is it that parents and participants are seeing that we're not giving ourselves credit for as staff. To have that discussion, and that's why it's great to have all of those people in the room at the same time as well, so that you can find that out from them, get that feedback, and have a real discussion around, okay, well, I thought we were doing this way, but now I hear it actually that way, and we do have a little more room for improvement. Or, oh, we are already meeting that. I forgot that we do it this way, and we were meeting it in a different way, that intent in a different way. So it's important to display that information, but not go on it just numbers and average that out, but to really build consensus around where the program currently is, again, so that we're efficient and effective in making those improvement plans. Thank you so much for participating. If you have any questions afterwards that you think of, you can contact me. Here is my contact information up. And I hope that you all are able to use the QSA tool to plan and implement positive changes in your programs. Thank you.
The recording of this webinar will be posted on NYSAN's website, nysan.org, and as I said, all this information can also be found at nysan.org. Thank you.